Welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you on board for Pome Fest, Cook Along with Callum. We'll just give you a couple more minutes to let a few more people jump on and then we'll hop straight into it.
Beautiful. If you are going to be cooking along with me today, I know some of you might just be watching the cooking session and might take the recipes away and cook this another day. Completely cool if that's you. But if you do want to cook either the beautiful taco dish we're going to make or the pear tart or both, then just while waiting for another 2 or 3 minutes, great chance to get some ingredients out, get organised, get some equipment out, just so that once we get off and racing, you're as ready as you can be. Cool. Just while we are waiting for a few more people to jump on, can you just tell us a little bit, Susie, about your role with Apples and Pears and how you got to be in that role?
Yeah, so my name's Susie Green. I'm CEO of the Apple and Pear Growers Association of South Australia. So we look after all the growers' interests here in South Australia. Here in South Australia, we grow something like 10% of the nation's crop of apples and pears. And most of them are grown right here in the Adelaide Hills. So Pome Fest is really about celebrating all things apples and pears.
So for someone who's around apples and pears all day, every day, do you still enjoy eating them?
I love apples and pears.
That's a good result.
No, this time of year I would have a couple a day, easy.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I've got a 9-month-old daughter at home here as well, and I have to say she absolutely loves apples and pears. That's like her go-to thing. I try and give them to her at the end of the meal because if I just give her slices of apple, she won't eat anything else. She'll just keep going back for more. Yeah.
That's great. What about yourself? What's your favourite?
Well, I guess I do eat a lot of both, and I think obviously from a cooking chefing perspective with cooking classes, catering, that kind of thing, we use them a lot because they're so versatile both in sweet and savoury applications. But to be honest, one of my favourite things about it is just the portability and the ease, and it's like fast food, so to speak. Because I run a catering business, we do a lot of catering at whether it's someone's wedding or someone's house or someone's business or whatever. And so I spend a lot of time in the car each day, and being able to just have something that's just literally grab and go. I would say I'm heading somewhere after this, and I've got an apple in my car ready to go for for a snack on the road. And that's such a common thing for me to do. So I think it's something that is an important part of in all of our lives in that regard.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I just was mentioning before that if you are cooking on today, make sure you got your ingredients out. I'm just looking at my ingredients and I'm like, you've got an egg out yet, so I'm just going to get an egg.
You get an egg, with me. And while Callum's getting an egg, I'll just do a little bit of intro into Pome Fest. So Pome Fest is a month-long celebration around, as I said, apples and pears right here in South Australia, in particular the Adelaide Hills. So this is our second year running Pome Fest. With all the COVID restrictions, it's looking a little bit different to how it looked last year, because last year we did have a market where you could come along. This year we're trying to do a mixture of online and plus a little bit of face-to-face as well. So if you hop onto pomefest.com.au or follow our Pome Fest Facebook page or the SA Apple and Pear Facebook page, you'll find all the details. But we've got some fantastic things on. We've got Cooking Along with Callum is launching the event today, which I'm really excited about. And then we've got some pruning masterclasses, grafting masterclasses. You can go and do tours of a packing shed so you can see how the apples actually get from the trees here to where we are on your plate and in the supermarkets. And then there's also this fantastic competition running for pretty much all of August, No Taste Like Pome. So we've got lots of different eateries right throughout the Adelaide Hills on board with this. So they're featuring an apple or pear dish, hero dish on their menu. And we really want you to come along and try all these beautiful different dishes in our beautiful different cafes, celladors, restaurants through the Adelaide Hills. The winning dish, the chef of that eatery gets this beautiful glass blind trophy.
Yeah, that is stunning, isn't it? Goodness me.
This beautiful pear trophy. And if you're the person who puts in the vote and that's the winner of the competition, you get a $500 hamper of apple and pear produce. So fresh apples and pears and ciders and other beautiful goodies. So all you need to do, come and visit some of the local eateries, and then you just need to enter the competition using the No Taste Like Pome hashtag. Tell us your reasons why the dish you've tried is the absolute best.
Beautiful. And so obviously if you're watching this right now, then you're on your Facebook page. So can you find out more information about this on your Facebook page?
Absolutely. So it's all on our
Don't
Fest.
eat now, of course. Watch us.
Yeah, watch us.
In an hour from now, have a look.
And make sure, while you're watching, make sure you tag all your friends to jump on too, because we really want people to enjoy this experience. So,
Absolutely.
Callum, I think that's probably enough from me.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to get cooking. If we good to rock and rolling thing, we've got a few on board.
I'll hand over to Callum and I'll jump out of the way.
Lovely. Thank you, Susie. Now, this is a little bit different for me as well. The last couple of months have obviously been a slightly different way of doing things for all of us. And last year, for those of you who I saw at the festival last year, you might have remembered. It was a really chilly day last year, and funnily enough, last year was in the marketplace a really cold day. I remember everyone was wearing blankets and rugged up in jumpers and scarves and that kind of thing. And today when we're inside my kitchen here, it's one of the finest winter days I've seen in the last couple of months. So it's an absolute cracker, and I hope that a few of you do cook along with me, and if you don't, no problem at all. The recipes are available, of course, for you to cook these dishes another time. Now, we are going to do two dishes, surprisingly enough, one with apples, one with pears. I know, shocking. I'm going to do a savoury and a dessert as well. But we are actually going to make the dessert first, so that's going to take a little bit of cooking time, so that if you are doing both, it's all going to kind of tie in together really nicely at the end. So, as I said, if you are cooking along with, get all your ingredients out, get all your equipment out, and I should let you know as well, I've got an oven preheated, so I've got it on fan forced. I can't remember what I wrote in the recipe, but it's probably like 200 degrees or something like that. Doesn't matter, hot oven, we're using puff pastry. Because it's so thin, it cooks so quickly, you can't really go wrong, but you do want the hotter the better really, just to get some good golden colour. So let's say about 200 degrees or whatever I wrote in the recipe. So, get your oven on. I've also got a pan, we're going to use that a little bit later for the tacos if you're doing that one. I've got a saucepan here, we're going to use this for our ganache in a moment. I've got a lined baking tray, some knives and chopping boards. Of course, I've got all my ingredients out ready to rock and roll. So the first one we are going to do has to be one of the quickest desserts in the world, and so many desserts. A lot of us are sweet tooths, but you know, when you get home on a Tuesday night and you get home late, a lot of us can't even bother cooking dinner, let alone dessert as well. This is one of those desserts where there's no refrigerating time, you don't have to wait for anything to set. There is baking time, but it's like 15 minutes. It's not a cake that takes 45 minutes and then you've got to let it cool. So it is a super quick one. And we're using a little bit of a cheat here. We are using a pre-bought puff pastry, but in reality, I know none of you are going to make your own puff pastry, particularly on a Tuesday night. So I have absolutely no problem with starting with a sheet of puff pastry there. So the first thing we're going to do is actually make the tart itself super easy. So we're going to do an open tart, which is why it's such a quick dish. Both quick to make and quick to cook. We've got a pear here. Just before we started, Susie and I were doing the maths about how many apples and pears specifically we do grow here in South Australia. Of course, about 90% of those are from the hills. 40 tonnes. 40, sorry, not 40 tonnes, that's not very much at all. 40,000 tonnes, in fact. We've got a wonderful Beck here that's operating the camera today, and she's had a giggle at my expense, saying 40 tonnes, not 40,000. And we worked out mathematically, from the weight of an average apple or pear, we reverse engineered it to figure out, in terms of individual pieces of fruit, 280 million we grow here every year, which is, if you just stop and think about that number, how huge that is, ridiculous. Very impressive indeed. And not only that, just the quality of what we produce here as well is second to none. So I've just taken off, with my pear, taken off the core, and we're just going to go through and slice it relatively thinly. I'd say a couple of mil thick. Doesn't really matter if it's not perfect here, because we're going to overlap it all over each other. So the idea is here, it's going to be an open tart, so we're going to have the pear itself is going to be in the middle of the tart, and then we're going to have the puff pastry around the outside of the pear is going to puff up and get crunchy and golden, absolutely delicious. So go through. Now, it is a little trick. If you cut, with most things in the kitchen, you cut forwards. With something like an apple and a pear, if you actually cut back towards yourself, you'll find that it stays in place a little bit better, whereas when you go forward, it sort of flings everywhere, and it's a little bit harder for something like this when you are going to layer it up. So I want to leave myself a little border, which I'm going to trace with, I'm going to score with a little knife in just a second, where I'm not going to put any fruit. So I'm going to go here. So I'm just going to lay my little pieces of pear. Now you can be as fiddly or as not fiddly with this as you like. I'm the kind of cook who's not particularly fiddly, so I'm not going to take too much time here making it absolutely perfect. But you do whatever floats your boat. So I'm just going to lay them all over the top of each other here. And the idea of cutting relatively thinly, we're going to get lots of surface area then, and therefore lots of kind of caramelization, lots of colour, and therefore flavour on our pear slices here in no time at all. All right. So lay these all on. And then what we want to do, you can see I've kind of kept myself here, maybe a little sort of 2.5 centimetre, 1 inch kind of sized border. And I'm actually just going to get a little paring knife now. Just use up these last couple of slices, don't want to waste anything. All right, pop this out. So I'm just going to then use a little knife here, and we're just going to draw like a little kind of square around our pears. Now it doesn't matter, once again, if this isn't perfect, it's just going to help the pastry around the outside of the pears puff up. So what I'm doing here is I'm scoring, so I'm not cutting all the way through, I'm not even pressing down at all, I'm actually just letting the weight of the knife just draw a line. It's probably going like halfway through the thickness of the pastry. Because if you cut all the way through, you can end up with an extra square of pastry, which is not what we want. And then on top of our pear here, we're going to go in with brown sugar. Doesn't matter if a little bit gets on the outside, but try and keep the majority of it so it's not going to burn on top of the pears. And you can imagine, of course, you could do this with apples as well. You could do this with poached quinces or something too, that you don't necessarily have to do it specifically with pears. So brown sugar all over the top. And then finally, cinnamon. You could use nutmeg, you could use cardamom, you could use some fresh thyme leaves or fresh rosemary or something would be nice as well. Don't want to go too hard, just a little pinch there. And then, our final little step, so just to recap, we've got pastry, we sliced the pear, laid it all over the top, brown sugar on, cinnamon on, and then that egg that I forgot to grab before, I've got now. Crack an egg into a bowl. We're just going to make a super simple little egg wash here. So I'll just grab myself a little pastry brush. Rather than doing it in a fork, I'll just use my pastry brush as my fork here. Give it a little beat together. If you don't have any on hand, you can just brush a little bit of milk or even drizzle a little bit of melted butter or olive oil over the top. Give it a little beat. And you just want to sort of paint that border that you've cut there. You just want to paint that with a little bit of egg wash, which is just going to help you get that pastry lovely and golden brown. And honestly, if I wasn't talking through this, once you've made this recipe a couple of times, it's honestly 5 minutes from deciding that you want to make this to actually getting it in the oven. It's super, super quick, particularly if you're not too pedantic with how well you layer things. If you want to make it look like it's come out of a patisserie and you're going to be there layering them one by one and making it absolutely perfect, then it can be a half an hour dessert. If you like me, a bit slapdash and just get it on there, it's a 5-minute dessert. So we're going to get that into our hot oven now. A lot of people talk about time. They say, how long does it take to cook? To be honest, I'm not going to put a timer on. The pear is so thin, that's definitely going to cook. The pastry would take around 15 minutes or so to get lovely and golden, maybe 15, maybe 20, depends on your oven. So it's not so much an amount of time, it's more just once it's golden and puffy and crisp and crunchy, that's when it's done. So we'll check on it every now and then, just see how it's traveling and just take it out when it's golden brown. Now Beck, your role is to make sure that I don't forget about it and we don't burn the tart.
Yes,
all right, so a couple of things for our dessert. We might also just in the last couple of minutes throw some hazelnuts onto the tray as well, just for them to toast up a little bit. You can either put them on whole and then take them off and cut them afterwards, because for the sake of this we're going to be doing it straight away, just so I don't have to cut ragingly hot hazelnuts, and so you don't have to do the same. I might cut them now and we'll sprinkle them onto the tray at the last minute. And we're going to make a little chocolate ganache as well. So just going to pop on here our hazelnuts. And actually, when you're chopping nuts, rather than most people at Sprout, my cooking school, I see a lot of people do this, and I see a lot of my team members spend time at the end of the night trying to vacuum or sweep up nuts off the floor because they get the knife, you get your hand, and they just sort of rock down on top of it, which is an effective way of cutting nuts, but it also flings them all over the kitchen. So if you actually just do a bit of a slicing through motion, what you'll find is you'll still be able to roughly chop them, but they'll tend to stay on your chopping board a little bit more. I've lost 2, but they've only just gone off the board. I reckon that's a pretty good result. I'm happy with that. So, alright, hazelnuts done. You can, if you like, you can toast them separately first, of course, whole, and then rub off the skins. But honestly, when you're eating it with crispy, crunchy pastry, which is really textural, that's kind of a similar crunchy texture the skin goes. I don't think you notice it, and I think you're just wasting a step in the kitchen. I often think the same with a lot of people in recipes will peel apples or pears, like for something like that I just made. I most certainly cannot be bothered because I think once it cooks down, it's soft, it's delicious, there's nutrients and vitamins and minerals in the skin. I just think, I don't know, for me, I don't think it's worth your time. But if you want to, once again, if you do want to peel it, then of course, go your hardest. Bit of a personal preference on there, it's not going to overly affect the dish one way or another. So hazelnuts, we're going to put that in, maybe give it a 10-minute head start, and then we'll chuck the hazelnuts in. So I'm just going to pop them over here. And then the final thing we're going to do for our dessert, and this is an optional extra, right? We're going to make a chocolate ganache. I've got here some cream. I think I said 85 grams of cream on the recipe. Now your ganache might look slightly different to mine in the end. The quantities I gave you in the recipe if you're cooking along work perfectly. I went to weigh out my chocolate cream and butter, and my scale ran out of batteries. So I'm just winging it. So mine's going to be a little thinner or a little thicker, I'm not sure, but it looks about right to me from when I've made this recipe before. So I've got here my cream in a saucepan. I'm going to throw in a little knob of butter as well, and I've got my chocolate in a heat-proof bowl. So I'm actually not going to heat the chocolate at all. I'm going to get our cream mixture here onto the stove. If you're a savoury sweet person like me, you can add a little pinch of salt at this stage as well. And we're just going to bring that cream and butter to the boil. Beautiful. And then we're going to bring it back over and pour it onto our chocolate. So, beautiful. Now, just while that's coming up for a second, I'll tell you a couple of things. We can certainly, if you can't be bothered making the chocolate ganache, you could use cream, you could use ice cream, mascarpone, creme fraiche, thick Greek yogurt, nothing. All acceptable things to serve with the tart. But hey, why not? It's winter, it's comforting, it's warming. Let's make some bloody dark chocolate ganache. So, now, Penny, do we have any questions as yet? Because obviously I've raced through a few dessert things there just to make sure that we're not getting away from people.
We have a couple of people cooking along. Callum, David Waters, and he was all prepped, ready to go, but didn't realise we were doing the dessert first, but he's on board. We've got Heidi, who's so excited to be here, and she's cooking along as well. And we had Jeanette, who said that she loved watching you on Masterchef, and her 10-year-old daughter, Caitlin, is so excited to be cooking with you. She also loves apples and was so disappointed in missing out on Pick a Pink Lady in the Hills this year, but this might make up for it.
Okay, nice. Some great comments there, thank you. And if you are cooking at home or watching this online, then please let us know your questions, because even if you're not cooking this right now, you might see something or want to know something for next time when you do cook it, so you're ready to rock and roll. Alright, so the idea is chocolate is easy to burn. So you can melt the chocolate, but by heating the cream and butter and pouring it onto the chocolate, it's going to be an incredibly gentle way of melting the chocolate. A ganache is effectively kind of like a chocolate mousse with no aeration. It's kind of like that Nutella sort of thickness and texture. So it's really beautiful. You can use the same recipe to ice a cake if you want, or use it in a number of dessert applications. But a little scoop on top of this tart with the hazelnuts is going to be really, really tasty. So our cream's just thinned out a little. It's just coming up to the simmer now. And then that butter you can see is just melting away as well. Looking the goods. All right, beautiful. And I'm sorry if I have thrown anyone off by starting with the dessert when you probably thought we were going to start with the savoury, but it's just so that it's all going to sort of come together by the end of this session. So you just want to make sure that butter's melted. Looking good. All right, let's come to the boil. Just going to take that off the heat now, and we'll pour that onto our bowl with the chocolate. Perfect. And now what you want to do, I know it's very tempting, I know you're going to want to stir it. I'm going to ask you to not stir it straight away, because as soon as you stir something, you actually start knocking heat out of it. It's the equivalent of when you got your coffee in the morning, if it's too hot and you go, and you're blowing on it to try and cool it down. You're doing the same thing when you're stirring it. So if you actually stir it too soon, there's not enough heat in the chocolate, and you can find yourself with a lumpy ganache. So just let it sit for a minute or two, soften up, and then we're going to whisk it together.
Callum, can you use milk chocolate for the ganache?
Yep, this exact same recipe, 100 grams of chocolate, 85 cream, 30 butter, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, all work just as well. So use whatever kind of chocolate you like. I'm quite a fan of, especially with the hazelnuts. I think dark chocolate, pear, hazelnuts is a really lovely combination. But of course, if you're making this with the kids, or if you're doing, if you're doing maybe apples and walnuts and milk chocolate with this recipe or something like that, would be really special as well. Yeah, so basically, whatever you like, can't go wrong. So I'm just going to let that sit for a sec, and then we'll give that a little whisk there and emulsify that mixture. So that's pretty much dessert done on the table. We just need to wait for it to cook. So we've done all the hard work there. I'm just going to have a look. It's probably been in the oven for 5 minutes or so. Cool. Starting to puff up, which is really nice. And I quite enjoy, actually, with the last couple of months everything's happening, doing cooking demonstrations from my own kitchen. It's quite lovely, because normally at a public event or something, I don't have an oven, so I can do things that I wouldn't normally be able to do. So thank you for being patient with us and persisting, and maybe giving this a crack at home yourself as well. And I promise you, when this comes out, even though it's a quick dessert, everyone is going to be smelling it and wanting to just dive in and have a crack at eating it, because it's absolutely delicious. So that's going to be another 10 minutes or so. We've got our ganache here. We've got our hazelnuts I'll tip in just a moment as well. I reckon by now, our ganache has probably had a minute or two just to sort of, let's come over a little squeeze. You don't have to use a whisk, you can just use a spoon, but a whisk is going to bring it together, because it looks like it's not going to mix. It looks like chocolate with just kind of thin cream on the top. But you'll find after just 30 seconds or so of mixing, it'll come together as a really beautiful ganache. Now, you can use this in a couple of different ways. You can either use it while it's warm, and when it's warm, you can see it's like a pourable chocolate sauce, beautiful. Or if you cool it in the fridge, it'll become more like that, as I said, like that Nutella peanut buttery sort of consistency, where you can scoop a chunk of it on top as well. So it depends if you like the warm chocolate sauce thing, or if you like the idea of cool on a hot dessert, like when you have ice cream on a hot brownie, that kind of temperature differential. You can have it like that as well. So it depends how you want it, but that is silky, it's smooth, it's looking absolutely delicious. And just for the purposes of today, I'm just going to leave it as a pourable sauce. So I'm just going to set that aside, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on.
If you don't have the hazelnuts, Rebecca would like to know what other nuts could you use? Walnuts or peanuts?
Yeah, walnuts. If you don't have hazelnuts, please don't be discouraged at all. And the idea of both these recipes today, guys, is that they're conceptual. They're an idea, something to take home and cook in your kitchen. If you don't have a particular ingredient, or you like something else, by all means swap it away. As I said, I'm using pears, you could use apples, or poached peas would be great. I'm using hazelnuts, but pecans, walnuts, peanuts, pistachios would be really beautiful as well. If you can't have nuts at all, sunflower seeds or pepitas even work really well in the same kind of way. And the exact same with the tacos we're about to make as well. There's different ingredients you can use depending on what you've got in your crisper. You don't necessarily run out and buy every single thing here if you've got some other beautiful produce in your fridge at home. So, hopefully we're all up to date with the dessert. We'll keep an eye on that as we go. But we're going to jump into savoury territory now. So, if you're cooking along with the taco, hopefully you've got all your bits and bobs organised. And the first thing I'm going to do is get a pan on, really nice high heat. So that when we start searing off our chicken in a moment, we get some really lovely colour. So big wide frying pan. I've actually got a little bit of oil in it already. So nice big frying pan. So I'm going to get it on the high heat. And then the only thing I really did, I didn't really do any prep beforehand so we could cook them together. Just for ease of today, you can, in the recipe it says to cook the chicken thighs whole, and then you take them out once they've cooked and shred them after. Just for ease today, I've actually cut them into strips first, and then we're going to just form that as part of the sauce. You can do it either or, either cut the chicken first or shred it once it's cooked. Both ways work. So we're going to get that pan on really nice and hot. And while it's heating up, we're going to get our veggies organised. So there's kind of two different types of veggies in this dish. We have veggies that we're using in our hot sauce, which is going to be part of the chicken, and we're going to have the vegetables that are in our salsa or in our kind of salad that's going to go on the tacos as well. And we're going to use apples in this dish. We're going to use Granny Smith apples specifically. And I think that for me, apples make so much sense in Mexican kind of cooking because they've got that lovely, tart, crispy, crunchy kind of thing going on that works so well with all the kind of flavours that you find in Mexican cooking. But not just Mexican actually, I use apples a lot in a lot of different kinds of cuisine. And one of my favourite ones to use it in actually is anything kind of Southeast Asian. So a dish that typically might be Vietnamese or Malaysian or Thai, apples work so well in because in those countries they'll find they might use papaya or green mango and those kind of things that don't tend to grow as well here in South Australia, of course. But the flavour profile and the texture when it's being used in a salad or in a dish of some kind is almost identical to an apple. So actually try that next time you're making one of those kind of dishes. So I've got here an onion. Mine happens to be an enormous onion, so I'm just going to use half of it. And a red capsicum as well. So I'm just going to go through, we're just going to slice up our onion. You don't have to be too precious. It's going to cook down for a little bit anyway. Just slice it any old how. And we're going to do the same with our red capsicum as well, because the idea is we're going to syrup our chicken in a second. And then we're going to add these veggies in to start softening down once we've browned the chicken off. So brown onion, you could use shallots, you could use red onion, you could use spring onions here as well. And then capsicum too. So I'm just going to take it off around the core there as well. Get rid of that. And then once I've got my seedless capsicum, I'm just going to go through it and slice that as well. So maybe I'll just talk about knife skills just for a second here. Good chance as well if you haven't yet to check your tart. I'm just going to jump over and have a little look at mine. Oh, almost done. Actually, let me pause on the knife skills thing because I reckon we're at the point we're getting golden, we're getting brown, we're getting crunchy and crispy. I reckon it's hazelnut time. So if your tart went in around the same time as mine did, if it went in a few minutes after, obviously wait a few minutes, but if yours went around the same time mine did, get your hazelnuts or whatever nut you've got at home. If not a nut, anything crunchy. And let's get them all over the top of our tart.
Chunky nuts, someone wants to know how big to cut the nuts.
You can't go wrong. Cut them as big or as small as you like. I've got them relatively chunky. You can see there's one little hole there still. So I'm just going to go. I've got some in halves, some little bits. I don't think it's good if you actually cut them too small because then you end up getting kind of a sandy, chalky sort of texture to them. So I think err on the side of slightly chunkier rather than slightly smaller. So that's just going to be a few minutes now. We'll take that out and we'll be good to go.
And someone asked, do we cut the chicken?
Yeah, so you can, if you don't want to cut the chicken, you can fry it up whole and then we'll cut it or shred it up later on. I have cut my chicken now just for ease for the purpose of this demonstration. So if you want to cut your chicken, I've got here a few chicken thighs that I've just kind of sliced up into kind of bite-sized pieces. I've got there sitting ready to rock and roll. Just while I'm getting the chicken pan nice and hot, I was going to talk about knife skills quickly. So whenever you're cutting anything on a board, you definitely want to choose a knife. So I used this one for scoring our pastry before because I'm using it like a pen almost. As soon as you're cutting something on a board, you want to choose a knife that you can fit your hand underneath the handle and still have it sitting flat on the board. So a paring knife like this, not suitable for cutting capsicum. And when I say it's not suitable, yes, you can cut a capsicum with it if you want, and I know so many of you do. But what you end up doing is because you can't actually get the knife straight, you end up doing these little sort of cuts like that, very slow and deliberate. Whereas if you get your practice up, once you've got your knife, the right knife for the job, and something underneath your board just to stop it slipping around, non-slip mat, paper towel, chucks cloth, tea towel, whatever you like. Something that's just going to keep it nice and steady. From there, you can actually then cut. I'll try and do it so you can see from your angle. And you can push all these onions and capsicums over this side. So then you're actually cutting on the forwards motion. This is kind of the opposite of what I did with my pear at the start. So you're actually going forwards, come back up, forwards, come back up, forwards, come back up. So you're only ever cutting on the forwards motion. and then you're just resetting your position. So if you get your practice up with that technique, then you're definitely going to be safer and more efficient, definitely quicker. Look at my nonsense Matt, he's not doing a very good job at the moment, because I'm cutting right on one side of the board. I'm getting some torque, turning my board around. It's going to be a much more efficient way to cut. So that's what we want to do there. Worth practicing. Alright, so that's our veggies for our sauce ready to go. My pan is ragingly hot now, it's just smoking, which is great. So I'm just going to now get our chicken in. Okay, so kind of like what I was talking about with the ganache, I know that you're going to want to get that chicken and move that bad boy around the pan. Just leave it do its thing. Promise me you'll leave it, because as soon as you start moving it around, you're going to start sweating the chicken, and you end up with kind of white chicken with bubbly liquid coming out of it. Not what we want. If you actually just let it do its thing, like if you're cooking a steak, you're actually going to get some golden brown on the chicken. So just let it do its thing for a few minutes. Now, I'm going to have to talk loud here for a minute, because that's going to be kind of noisy, and I don't want to put the exhaust on because it's going to make more noise. So, we've got capsicum here, we've got our brown onion as well, and then the next one is some garlic. We're just going to get a couple of cloves of garlic, get them all peeled. I'm going to add that in too. So, just take the skin off.
Did you put salt on the chicken?
I have not put salt on the chicken yet. Now, I'm definitely going to. That's a really good question. It's actually, salt is something a lot of us put in at the very start of the dish. I would say more add salt as a rule of thumb, halfway through the dish or a third of the way through the dish, and then again a little bit just before the end. The reason that I say that is because if you add salt to almost anything at the start of the cooking process, salt draws out moisture. So actually putting too much salt on the meat here actually starts making it sweat as well, which is not what I want. I want to get it fried, get some colour on it. I don't want it to be kind of going all sweaty. So if you're putting down onions for a risotto, definitely season it. If you want to get golden brown, like sausage sizzle onions, then don't season it at the very start. Let it get some colour and then season it. So we've got our. Now I wanted to actually cut my garlic quite chunky. A lot of people cut garlic really, really small, but when you've got a piece of capsicum that's that big, if you cut the garlic really small, it's just going to burn and overcook by the time the capsicum's cooked. So I'm just going to, on purpose, cut my garlic relatively chunkily.
Do we need to check the tart?
Sorry?
Do we need to check the tart?
Yeah, I'll have a look at it. Thank you very much. Alright, so chickens, I still haven't stirred my chicken, alright? Still won't stir your chicken. If mine hasn't burned, yours not going to burn, alright? Alright. Beautiful. So, this is our tart. Golden, crispy pastry. Not sure if you can hear that from where you are, but it's sounding crisp to me. The hazelnuts are starting to get some golden brown in there. The pear's cooked. Oh, look at that. Soft and delicious, tender pear. That's looking really, really delicious. So we're going to set that aside as well. So, dessert's pretty much done, guys. We've got our silver turkey chicken. We've got our tart out. Can you see that from where you are?
Just, yes.
I'll bring it back in.
Yep, that's it. Yep, got it there.
Hazelnut, pear tart, dessert from start to finish, 20 minutes. Beautiful chocolate ganache. I'll pour this over the top of the tart, but I'll do it right at the last minute, okay? Now I'm going to think about going and turning my chicken, okay? Then grab myself some tongs. Let's go have a little look. Still haven't seasoned it yet. No spices, no herbs, no salt, no pepper, nothing. Let's get the colour first, and then we'll start building up the layers of flavour. This is what I'm talking about. I want this lovely kind of golden brown just here. That's what I'm after, and that's what you get by not turning it too quickly. Okay, really lovely. That lovely golden brown. Yeah, that's what I'm after. So, I'm gonna get some colour on the chicken. And actually, I actually don't want to cook the chicken through at this stage. I want raw chicken on purpose at this stage. Okay, so because we're actually going to add the chicken in with some liquid in a moment and cook it further. So if you cook the chicken through at that stage, you're going to end up with really dry, overcooked chicken by the end of the dish. So purposely, still want raw chicken. Obviously, we're going to recook it. So I'm just going to get some of that oil back in, some of the chicken kind of cooking juices as well. All right, and now we're going to add our veggies. So we're going to go in with our onion, with our capsicum, and with our garlic. Beautiful. And that's why you need a really hot pan. If you're adding so much cold food to it, it's going to really suck away the temperature in your pan. So at this stage as well, you can add a little extra drizzle of olive oil if you like. Still haven't added any flavour to it yet. Bear with me. We are going to make this delicious. We're getting colour first, and then we're going to start building it up, okay? So once again, let it do its thing. Just let it chill for a minute. So while we're doing that, we're going to get a few other ingredients kind of organised for us. So we're going to go, I've got some coriander here. Now, I don't know if you think it says this in the recipe, so forgive me, but we're going to use the leaves in like a little kind of saltery salad thing we're going to make with the apples. I'm actually going to use the stems here, which a lot of people throw in the bin, actually as an added little flavour to our base that we're building over there with the capsicums, the onions and the garlic. So I'm just going to chop up roughly the stems. So much flavour, nutrition, really vibrant, delicious. Please don't throw away your stems. Pretty much any salt herbs you use, whether it's something like this, or a spaghetti bolognese, or a stock, or a soup, they're going to go in as well. Just going to give it a little toss. Start to soften everything down. Beautiful. Just going to wipe my knife in there as well. Okay. So, what else do we need for our little sauce? Well, we've got here a couple of spices. So now that we've got some golden brown chicken, now that we've got some golden brown onions, we've got some softened capsicum, some garlic, we're now going to start building up the flavours in the pan. We've got ground cumin, absolutely quintessential in not just Mexican cuisine, but actually so many countries around the world. Cumin is a really dominant spice, from Morocco through to Mongolia, through to India, through to Mexico. Cumin is such an important one, and it's one I use all the time in my kitchen. And paprika as well. You can use hot paprika if you like it spicy. You can use smoked paprika if you want that depth of flavour. Whatever paprika you've got at home is absolutely fine. So we're going to go in. Now let's say, go hard, go more than what you think. A good heaped tablespoon or two of cumin, and a good heaped tablespoon or two of paprika as well, okay? At this stage, we're now going to add some salt. So we're going to go now, pretty generous pinch of salt. Okay, I'm going to go some cracked black pepper as well. That's an optional one, don't have to do it. And of course, if you wanted to, you could add some chili or something at this stage as well. And so now, what's going to happen is we're going to go from frying to all those spices are going to suck up the juices left over in the pan. And actually will change the noise of what's happening in the pan. You can hear that. It's gone from going and sizzling away to it's now starting to sound quite dry. So what we're going to do is a process called deglazing. That's when you get a liquid, can be water, can be wine, can be stock, can be tomato. It's going to lift up all those little stuck-on bits on the bottom of the pan, and that's where so much flavour is. So we need to finish cooking through our veggies, we need to finish cooking through our chicken. So I've got here a little bit of chicken stock. You can use a vegetable stock or whatever you like. I'm going to pour some of that in now. Cool. I've got here a can of tomatoes. It's going to go in. You could use passata as well, or in the middle of summer do this with some beautiful fresh tomatoes as well if you like, whatever floats your boat. And then now we're going to return our chicken. So remember the chicken was brown but not cooked all the way through. Tip it in, juices and everything, because that's just going to add another layer of flavour again. And now we're starting to add flavour to our beautiful little kind of mixture here. So we just need to cook it now until the tomatoes have cooked down, slightly darkened in colour. And the chicken is of course cooked through. So we're just going to gently simmer it now for 5 to 10 minutes or until those two things have happened. So once again, it's not necessarily a time, it's kind of what you're looking for in that tomato mixture and the chicken as well. All right. Beautiful. So, let that do its thing. I'm going to now change from a pair of tongs to a wooden spoon. I did an online kind of cooking class last week here in my kitchen, and I had a wooden spoon. I was stirring a dough, and I literally snapped the spoon clean in half. I've been cooking for a long time, but I've never done that, so I don't know how I did it. So I've now got my other wooden spoon here in my house, which is like probably more a commercial sized wooden spoon. So just a normal wooden spoon is absolutely fine. But this will work for me for now. I can stir from a distance. Look at this. I can be in the room next door and be stirring this mixture. So I'm just going to let that do its thing. I'm just going to pull the heat back now from being, I've had it on high heat the whole time. This is the first time now I'm just pulling it back to more of a lower sort of heat. And now I'm just going to tick it along and just thicken up that mixture a little bit darker, get the tomatoes from being kind of acidic to that sweet, rich umami sort of tomato flavour. And we'll come back to that in a moment. All right. So we're now going to make our little Granny Smith apple kind of salsa or a salad, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to get myself a bowl like this. This is probably slightly open for this bowl, but it's going to work well. But it would have too big of a bowl and too small. So we're going to add a few things. I'm going to start with some spring onion. Now, if you like, you can actually add the white part of the spring onion to your sauce mixture as well. Works quite well. I'm just going to go straight into my salsa with it. Beautiful. So I'm just going to thinly slice these, and that's going to go into my bowl as our first little ingredient. Alright, beautiful. Once again, don't be too precious because we're going to have some other chunky bits involved in there as well. We're going to go in with our coriander leaves. I'm just going to, and I know that not everyone loves coriander, that's okay. If you're not a coriander fan, mint here would work really well. Even some fresh basil could work too. When that's at its absolute best in a warm month would be great. Just going to chop this once or twice and get some coriander leaves in. I'm actually going to reserve it for you. I'm going to make a really simple yogurt sauce in a minute. So I'm going to keep a few coriander leaves for that. Oh, making a mess here, get some of these coriander leaves in here. So spring onions, coriander leaves as well. I'm going to go in, I actually cut my purple cabbage as my last thing. So I've quite deliberately kept, of course, cutting the apple as one of the later stages in the ingredient, just so I don't have to worry about discolouring. Although because we're going to get some citrus into our little mixture here in just a second, it doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to take off some little kind of thin strips of the apple here, so I'm actually leaving it on the core for now. I'm just going to stack these on top of each other. So little discs of apple. Beautiful. And then, once they're stacked on top of each other, just then go through, need to recheck what's going on with my non-slip mat here. This is slipping all over the place. It's called a slip mat. Alright. So I'm just basically getting like little matchsticks, little julienne of apple, but really you can do it on if you have a nice sharp grater, you can do it on that, or a mandolin works really well as well. But I just want little hits of that kind of sweet acidity and that crunchiness you get from beautiful Adelaide Hills apples. Alright, so that's going to go in as well. And of course a dish like this, you can easily double or halve or whatever, depending on how many people you're cooking for, so it's a really nice and easy one.
Someone wants to know, did you put a lid on the pan?
I did not put a lid on the pan. Do you want to, Beck, you want to jump over and have a little look at how our sauce is looking?
I want to eat it.
Excellent. So the reason I didn't put a lid on the pan actually is because I've added that stock, I actually want the sauce, I want to evaporate the water content of the stock, but just leave the flavour behind. So I actually, on purpose, have left it uncovered so the sauce can thicken. If you cover it, it'll cook quicker, but you'll end up with quite a watery, thin sauce. You actually want it to reduce and do its thing. So, Granny Smith apple, juliennes into our bowl, spring onions, coriander, happy days. Now you can use whatever citrus you've got here. If you've got a lemon, if you've got a lime, if you've got a little squirt of vinegar, just something to kind of help tie all those flavours together. Squeeze that in as well. And now last ingredient for this part is some purple cabbage. So purple cabbage, or red cabbage, whatever you want to call it. Just going to get a little wedge off here. I don't need probably all of that. And I'm just going to go through and finally slice that as well. And we'll get that into a bowl and give it a little toss together. So if you like, you can go give your chicken a little stir now if you are cooking along. So I might go do that after I get this red cabbage cut.
Best type of apple to use.
Yeah, so you can, honestly, you can use whatever apple you like here, and I have tried different types. You do want an apple here that's got a bit of crunch to it. I think the apple is a really important textural part of this dish. And that's, I think the reason I've chosen Granny Smith myself here is because of A, the texture, but also that kind of tart sweetness as well. That sweet sour thing works really, really well. You're not just dessert cooking, it holds up really well, but also in terms of in savoury cooking, you get that bit of acidity as well. It helps the lemon juice here. That actually adds to the flavour and cuts through the richness of our chicken sauce. So just going to give that a little stir. That's starting to thicken, it's starting to darken in colour, looking really, really good. How are we going for time, Penny? Are we going right?
We are 2:46.
Perfect. Awesome. All coming together.
And that question was from Molly and Elsie.
Nice. Well, thank you, Molly and Elsie. Much appreciated. I should mention as well, of course, we're having tacos. You can use the crunchy ones. You can use some tortillas like I've got here as well. I've got them off to one side. And the final thing we're going to do here is make a little kind of yogurt sauce. So I've got here some thick Greek-style yogurt. So this is going to be something to kind of tie together our chicken mixture, our lovely kind of salsa here, which I'm just going to give a little toss. And our little yogurt sauce. So I've got here yogurt, I've got a lime. Now if you don't have one of these like little fine graters, you don't have to put the zest in, or you can use a traditional cheese grater, that sort of rough side. I'm going to add some lime zest. So I always kind of think, yeah, if you're going to use a citrus, you may as well use the zest for something as well, because you get a different flavour profile from it. So I'm just going to grate some of our lime zest in here as well. And then in half, and squeeze a little bit of that in. This happens to be an enormous lime, so I'm just going to put a little bit extra in here just because the flavour's going to be good. And I guess this is like, when I'm cooking at home, I actually really don't ever use a recipe for anything. So forgive me if I've strayed from the written recipe once or twice. I think I've mostly kept to it. But I think that with a dish like this, it's not going to affect the recipe if you want to add a little bit more lime juice, or you like it kind of richer, or you want to add an extra pinch of salt, or you don't have cabbage at home, so you want to use fennel or grated celery or kohlrabi or whatever it might be, or you want to just add a handful of baby spinach in here, or rocket or whatever. There's really no wrong answers. It's what works for you and your family and what you like eating. That's the correct answer for you. So in our sauce here, yogurt, lime juice, lime zest. I've added a pinch of salt as well. I'm just going to add a little drizzle of olive oil to it too. Definitely doesn't say that in the recipe. I think it's kind of nice. Just richens it up ever so slightly. That's an optional one. Get that little stir together. And one final one as well. And once again, this is also not the recipe. This is just an optional one too. I kept a little bit of my coriander, which I'm just going to bunch up. I'm just going to chop, because I love coriander. I'd have it on my breakfast cereal if I could. I'm just going to roughly chop that and stir it through the yogurt as well. But, once again, if you're a chili fan, put some hot sauce or a chili through here. Or if you really like it, kind of sour flavours like my wife, she might put an extra lime in here or a lemon. I'm going to put some coriander in here. You could put some chipotle in, or you could put a little spit of tahini. You can really do whatever you like to sort of kind of customise it for your own kind of flavour profile. You get that little stir together. Beautiful. Alright, so yogurt sauce done, our little lime yogurt, and whatever version of yours that is done. We're going to set that to one side. I've got our little salsa here, our little salad-y kind of number. Have a little look at that. I've in hindsight definitely gone way too large of a bowl here, but that's all right. Gives me plenty of room to mix it around. So you can see how lovely and vibrant and fresh and crisp and crunchy that looks. That's done. And then you can see this sauce is just starting to thicken up as well, and I know that chicken's going to be cooked. So I'm really just trying to intensify that sauce a little bit now as well. And that's almost done, to be honest. So I'm just actually going to get my tortillas organised and start putting some of these together. All right, how are we going for questions, Penny? Do we have any?
Everyone must be mesmerised by your cooking. No questions coming
Well
through.
explained?
Well
Okay.
explained.
Either it's been well explained, or some of you that are cooking along is so far behind, you're scrambling to catch up, you don't have time to type a question. It could be that as well, who knows, who knows. I'm going to do a couple of these up, so I'm going to grab our tortilla here, I'm going to grab our beautiful little mixture. This is time to come over. Obviously, if you're not confident your chicken's cooked, have a little look at it. If you cook your chicken whole, of course, you could take it out and shred it at this stage, or just chop it up with a knife. I've cooked this dish a couple of times, and I can guarantee myself that chicken's cooked. But if you're not sure, just take it out onto a board, chop it in half, have a little look. So I'm going to put some of this onto our little tortillas here.
Rebecca says she's keeping up just.
Okay, well, Rebecca, if, I'm not sure if you watched Masterchef or not, but there was a challenge I had to cook against Gordon Ramsay, anything like this, where I had to keep up with him, and I can safely say I know how you feel. So, so we've got our lovely little green apple kind of salsa here too. That lovely red cabbage in it, spring onion, citrus juice. Happy days, yum. And this is one that, you know, if I was doing this for my friends or my family, there's no way I'd be plating this up for them. I'd be putting the pan on a little board in the middle of the table, I'd be putting the bowl of salsa there, I'd be putting the yogurt sauce there, and everyone would just be making their own. It's such a lovely way of eating a dish like this. A little spoon of our yogurt sauce as well. Beautiful. And that is our little chicken tacos with our green apple salsa and our little kind of yogurt limey sauce as well. And then finally, I'm just going to give my board a super quick wash off, just as the camera's having a little close look at those.
We have one person who's burnt their tart and another person who would like to know if they can reheat their tart.
Okay, you could 100% reheat your tart if you want to just pop it back in the oven. So you could eat your tacos now if you were making that, and then when you're ready to eat your tart, just flash it back in the oven for like 3 or 4 minutes just to kind of crisp it back up again. Is no problem at all. For the person who burnt their tart, I'm very sorry, and maybe I should have given you some more clear time considerations, but I'm guessing it's not burnt the whole way through. It's probably just burnt on the side or on the bottom, in which case the cooked pear hazelnut bit will still be delicious and the ganache will still be delicious. So just sort of scrape off the little bit of pastry and then go slowly when that ever happens and you'll be absolutely fine. My dad used to always say to me when I was learning to cook, you know, if the worst thing that happens in your day is that you burn a bit of steak or something, if that's the worst thing that happens to you in a day, then that's still a pretty good day. So I'm not gonna take that as a negative. Now, and then the final thing here as well with that tart, mine's actually still a little bit warm and it's still quite, you can see that that's crispy as, so it's still pretty crisp. So I'm not going to worry about putting mine back in the oven, but of course you could when you get to eating it if you like. And you can see this ganache as well has just thickened up now, and that's a beautiful looking ganache, yum. So when I first made it, remember, it was like a pourable chocolate sauce. So if you use it straight away, if you weren't cooking the tacos and use it straight away, you can pour it all over. I'm just going to do some little dollops of our ganache on the top. I'll tell you what, I reckon that Susie and Beck and Penny here and myself are going to have a lovely little time hoofing into this together. Here's the baking paper it's on. bring it back to a chopping board. Woohoo!
Oh, wow.
Oh. Imagine if you went to a friend's house, or your own house, and got served that for dessert. I think you'd be pretty happy indeed. So, 2 recipes there, guys. The chicken green apple tacos, one for a quick dinner, one to have your mates around with, one to celebrate with, one to have a crack at this winter, and then a beautiful little pear and hazelnut tart with a chocolate ganache as well. One of the easiest and quickest desserts you'll ever find, but easy and quick doesn't mean it's not delicious, because I can't wait to eat this. So in terms of the cooking demonstration for today, we're of course coming towards an end. You better take these recipes, and if you haven't cooked them today, cook them again another time. Please do, and please keep an eye on the Facebook page as well for all the details about the No Place Like Pome competition and how you can be involved, win that beautiful $500 prize pack, as well as maybe highlight one of your favourite local cafes or restaurants or eateries, celladors, or whatever it might be. Perhaps, oh, my time is going off, perfect. Perhaps I can invite Susie back and Penny from Pick a Local, Pick SA, who's been answering and asking all of your questions. Have a little try. Do you want to try a little bit of the tart? Do you want to try a little bit of the taco?
I'm just dying to have a try, but we'll finish up first, and we won't make everyone too jealous. But hopefully they've all got the exact same beautiful dishes at home to enjoy.
Yeah, and if you did cook these dishes today, please take a photo, tag us in. We'd love to see your efforts. Yeah, that's a really beautiful part of today. So please let us know how you went. If you've got any comments or if you've got any questions as well that you want to ask afterwards, please let us know. We'll try and jump on and get those answered for you.
So we really, big crowd, a big round of applause from a big crowd here. But no, thank you so much, Callum, for being a part of this and really showing your beautiful skills. I've learned myself so many tips. I can see the other girls just nodding their head so many times, like, oh, I have to put that one in the bag to remember. But no, it's been really great. So we really appreciate it. And I do also need to acknowledge a couple of people who've made this event sort of happen. So firstly, the Adelaide Hills Council have been fantastic support in bringing Pome Fest together. And we've also had some funding through the National Bushfire Tourism Recovery Fund. As everyone knows, we did have some bushfires come through the hills late last year, and which did impact on some of our apple and pear growers as well. So this is really a great opportunity for our industry to rebound back. And also the fantastic support of Pick a Local, Pick SA, who's Callum is a wonderful ambassador for. So I'm going to hand over to Penny to say a few words about what Pick a Local, Pick SA is all about. But I think between us, it's all about supporting fresh, local, beautiful produce. So,
yeah, so Pick a Local, Pick SA supports our South Australian horticultural industry from growers all the way through to retailers. And we love working with Callum to showcase the beautiful produce that we have here in South Australia, and yet another way that we can use Adelaide Hills apples and pears. And we would just love everyone out there, look for the logo to make sure that you're supporting South Australian businesses. And when we've got recipes like this to use our amazing produce, then why would you not want to get behind the apple and pear growers and make one of these tarts, which I can't wait to try.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I'm not just saying this, but as a chef in South Australia, we're so spoiled because the chef is only as good as their produce, and if you're starting with amazing produce, you actually don't need to do anything that complicated to it to make something really, really delicious. And we do, I don't just enjoy working with Pick a Local, Pick SA because it's South Australian. I genuinely think our produce here is some of the best anywhere in the world.
fantastic.
All right.
Should we dig in?
Cool. We're gonna hoof in, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll hope to see you take photos soon. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.